talking about all things going on this week with our clients, our partners, our friends, and it's going live on YouTube, on LinkedIn, as well as on Facebook, and being recorded for our podcast, which is available on Spotify and various other channels. So if you're watching with us now, please feel free to put your comments, thoughts, questions in the chat feed all the way throughout. We'll try and get to all of them. And if not, we'll respond afterwards. And please do, if you're watching the recording, we still continue responding to questions and comments afterwards too. Today, I am really happy to say we've got wonderful great guest and friend and client, Kerry O'Neill, who is the People and Culture Transformation Director for Ofcom, as well as Ant, who I normally talk to every single week as well. So
hello. Me.
Kerry, how are you?
Really good, Alex. Really, excited. I can't believe it's racing through the summer solstice this week. I sort of that midpoint of the year is felt like it's crept up, but a kind of important juncture to think about the year ahead as well.
It really has raced by, hasn't it? And it makes everyone kind of stop and think, oh my goodness, because we're having our Q1 review today. I know lots of people are having either Q1 or Q2 reviews, and you do have to take stock and think, goodness me, look how much we've done. And even I was saying to Ant earlier, it feels like a very long week. There was stuff that we did at the beginning of the week, and it feels like a month ago. Yeah,
it's great to have you with us, Kerry. It's really nice to hear different perspectives. I don't know how much you've seen the other sessions, but it's so interesting to hear different perspectives from different industries and different experiences, from careers to HR analytics to loads of different areas. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and everything today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's a nice start to the day.
So, well, what's going on? So there's quite a lot going on. Obviously, last night there was news about holidays, and it feels like everyone I know has gone really quiet. And I think quite secretively, I think people have been booking holidays and not telling anyone because they didn't want to tell everyone they were going on holiday. And it feels like it's still going on this morning. I think there's some quiet secret holiday booking happening. But also, there's a whole load of stuff going on about remote working, about, trying to recruit in a really tough market, about purpose. How do we get people into a hybrid environment and keep culture really rife? How do we manage office and commercial properties that we're not using in the same way? So much happening this week. Kerry, what's top of your agenda this week?
Well, it's funny you should mention those topics, Alex, because hybrid working is high on the agenda. For us, we have been starting to look at how do we come out of the pandemic. So real sort of a moment for eyes up and starting to look out. And we talked to our colleagues about wanting to start to trial hybrid working from the autumn. So lots to consider around that. And we've had a lot of discussions this week about how do we actually make use of the space that we have available to us? What is the technology? What is the tools? And then what are the subsequent behaviors that we will need to adopt to make all of that work? And there's no easy answer straight away. It's working it through. And we've decided to trial hybrid working first in order for us to make decisions based off evidence, based off how we're going to really work after the pandemic, rather than sort of rushing straight in to make sort of a big organizational decision that's pretty much potentially based off our emergency response to COVID rather than our future pattern. So a lot there. We've also been talking to colleagues about annual leave. And so this holiday news, I think, will give a bit of a boost to some. It'll be a bit of a worry to others, I'm sure. But we've been encouraging colleagues that well-being is important. Whilst holidays might not look the same, it's really important that people take time off and sort of significant blocks of time off, ideally, to kind of recharge, re-energize, refresh as we head through the years. So it's really interesting how those topics flow back into the workplace in a really quite real way.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because of the focus on hybrid seems to be like really urgent and important because it's what's right in front of us. But actually there is so much more going on, isn't there? and so many questions going on about what's the right way and the wrong way. And exactly as you said, this is going to need to be an experimentation phase, isn't it, where everyone is trying to work out what's right for their organization and their people. And I guess one of the things that's come up for me a bit this week is I've been listening to lots of webinars. I attended a great CIPD one on, gosh, I don't even know what day it was. It was a couple of days ago. And that was Cyprian. And he did such a great sharing of what different organizations are doing and the data behind kind of hybrid and remote working. But there's just so much more going on, isn't there? And it's like, what's beyond the hybrid conversation? But also, how are we going to find what works for us? And in terms of putting people first, which obviously all organizations really do care about in loads of different ways, what do we put first? Do we put people's wants first or people's needs first? And do people know what they need? Do they know what they really want? Or, are people going with the crowd and the media in terms of, what's the popularist vision and thinking going on? And I feel like there's quite a lot of people being swayed by lots of other things rather than hearing the reasons why they genuinely want a certain way of working. And it's, I don't think there's no one size fits all, is there?
I think where there is a slight sort of risk with hybrid working at the moment is it's one dimension of work pretty much. It's where you work on any given day, and there's a lot more to think about, I think, in the post-pandemic thinking of ways of working, and it's really important that those are not crowded out of the discussion. We've seen huge mental health impacts of COVID that we'll need to, I think about in the workplace for an awful long time. But also we've been starting to think that physical health is really important too. We're going to now have to live with the virus. We're going to have to think about making sure that people don't come into work with the flu, and how we think about our physical health feels really important too, and the join up between that. And I think there's a real risk that the hybrid working piece can just all become about place, and we miss a whole sort of nuance around what's important as we move forward. I also think right now it feels like sort of there's a danger people become very entrenched in their view of what they think the workplace needs to look like for them, either them personally or their organisation, based off an experience that's been entirely extraordinary and entirely unique. And so, there is a lot to work through. And I think for us, that's why we wanted to trial and work it through over a period of months. And I know that other organisations are doing that as well, or taking. But I think what we have found is there is a need to make sure that the organisation at the end of the day is a collection of human beings. It has needs as well, and that balance. I think it's going to take a very sort of astute human leadership to balance what's going to need the needs of the individual versus the needs of the organisation to be its best self as an organisation, as well as an individual to be their best self as an individual.
No, I like that concept.
It's something that we're hearing quite a lot, actually. It's that role modeling piece for leaders. How do I role model a hybrid workplace that I've never experienced myself? So I'm learning as I go. And that's the point, right? I'm learning. I need to role model learning and that continuous improvement. I'm really interested. How did you communicate that experimentation? I know that's a thing that a lot of people are trying to do, but actually not communicating it very well, or not being transparent, or they're going, we're going to kind of experiment for X period of time, and that doesn't land well. How have you communicated, and how's it been landing?
We had an all company event or session, so over 800 people joined us live. And we talked to the fact that we'd done a survey last year, and 88% of our organisations suggested hybrid working as the best way to think about our future after the pandemic. So we've sort of taken that, and we got everyone together as virtually, which is fantastic. And that's one of the huge benefits, I think, of learning how to be an organization virtually, is we would never have been able to have done that physically to get 800 people together. We then talked to the fact that we would like to trial. We're an evidence-based organization, being a regulator, so we've talked to the measurements and the real need to listen deeply throughout. And we've also put all of our directors and managers in charge of the trial. So it'll be for them to really shape what hybrid working will look like for their teams, and sort of almost a mass listening exercise is what we're after, along with lots of sort of careful reviews. And we used some tools to get people to put answers in that came up live on the screen. So we sort of did this sort of 800-person collaboration exercise of what people were most excited by, what are they most nervous by, what's their top tip, and that's been continuing. So this week what we've been doing is getting groups of people together and starting to talk about what does the space need to look like for hybrid. But the other thing that we've been doing, and I think based off the conversational approach, is we've given all managers a bit of a conversation guide to talk to their teams about how do they feel right now, but also how do they feel about hybrid working and coming together. I'm not going to pretend that it's been, that it's landed entirely brilliantly. I think that would be any organization saying that is probably not quite true. Some people are very worried about returning to a hybrid working type workforce for lots and lots of different reasons. And that sort of general nervousness, I think, about the future seems very prevalent through the discussions. And to me, there's sort of the need then to have well-being as really high up the agenda for us is key. And it was great that this week as well, I reviewed with our wellbeing manager, Rupinder, the results of our brilliant wellbeing coaching work that with yourselves that's just gone down so well in our organisation.
It's really good to hear, and I'm hearing that a lot. Wellbeing has become a really important piece, and I was just going to put up another question here around what's the focus beyond the hybrid working focus, which is really front of mind for so many people right now. There's a lot more going on, so what's next? And wellbeing, obviously, very, very important. Also, purpose still is coming back through, and some really interesting stats this week on recruitment. I don't know if you're recruiting at the moment, Kerry, but we've got some stats that show that 30% of organizations are looking to grow, and 70% at least are still looking to maintain their current workforce, and yet 48% of people are actively looking for a new role. And I thought that was really, really interesting, because if all these organizations are looking to grow or maintain their current workforce, where are all these people going to come from? And it seems like we're anticipating there's going to be quite a large kind of avalanche of people moving, and it's going to cause some real organization stress, I think. And the interesting part, it was I think it was Capgemini that shared this, was that they were saying people aren't unhappy in their roles. They're not unhappy. They're quite happy with their managers. They like the job they do, but they're just a bit bored. And the only thing they can change in their current environment is their job, because they can't go on holiday and they can't go and do the things they normally can. And they want something new and exciting to get their teeth into. And so people are more actively looking for roles than ever before. And that is, that's quite scary when you think about the tacit knowledge that's held within teams and people that's holding things together and has been holding things together. How are we going to really retain people? Is it going to be the well-being piece? Is it going to be purpose? What's the piece we're going to use to retain? Because hybrid working and remote working won't be a USP for anyone, because most people will be doing it.
The from my I do think it is going to be quite a disruptive period over the next couple of years. People have now had a lot of time, I think, to tune into what they really want, and there's and also wanting potentially more security, want to move on in their careers, and I do think we will see quite a lot of movement, as you say. From my perspective, organizations that are growing are, I think, really exciting places often to be into, but you do have to generally be a little bit more willing to be in a slightly more ambiguous work environment, because I think, growth is is a fairly disruptive process in and of itself. It's introducing lots of new people, potentially new ideas, new products. And that sort of freshness of it sort of almost brings an inherent ambiguity to the workforce. And so not only in a growth environment do you need to, I think, really work hard at sharing your values, sharing your culture, making sure people can connect as quickly as possible, making it easy for people to start in their work jobs well. But also people who are in the organizations need to up, I think, the tolerance level of ambiguity. And that can often be quite hard as well. And that brings in then resilience and status and reassuring people of their value, and recognition becomes a key part. And all of those things feel things that positive workforces, positive workplaces can cope with. But where there's been struggle, where things maybe have broken down, that's going to be a harder environment, I think, for people to thrive in.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, and I can see you're about to put a question on, Alex, which is a really key one, right? Which is, what is my USP now for a lot of companies? What is my employee value proposition? Like, what is making people want to come and work with me or stay with me? And it is beyond the kind of things that we've been talking about in terms of flexibility of working. That is good, but there's a human connection to not just the organization, actually, because we've been hearing a lot about purpose. That is one thing. And the decisions that company is making to improve the world or improve some kind of environmental, social kind of governance or some kind of purpose, but also to my team, the people around me, the people that are closest to me within that organization. We've been seeing a lot of focus on teams, because that team experience we know is so critical, as well as the manager experience. It's like secondary, most important kind of reason that people stay and stick around. Oh, I love the people. The people here are great. Well, the people that you see are only the people that you're really interacting with every day. So that how they connect is so important, right?
I completely agree. We have seen people recently they've been with the organization a long time and they've now decided to leave. So the people argument, I think, is really, really strong. But so is that sense that I'm growing, that I've got a sense of fresh perspective. And I think the combination of, and I think, organizations that have an inherently great purpose are great at attracting people. But you have also got to make sure there is individual purpose within that, and that people are themselves driving that organizational purpose, I think, quite clearly in their work. And so that connection of thinking about how does that job connect to the thing that's attracted them or brought them in or retaining them is really important. And I think that sense of how am I growing, how is my skill set developing, is a huge retention factor once you get beyond the fact that, yes, I can now potentially go and do my favorite Pilates class on a Friday morning, and I can, I can drop my kids off, and that sort of thing. And that whole work experience feels so key to be thinking about. And that's why I think, at the beginning I was saying I'm really worried if we just zone in on one aspect of this. But I think, well-being to me does draw a lot of links together. I mean, we saw Bumble to give a collective week off in the US worrying about burnout, and I thought that was quite eye-catching actually as an initiative.
It is.
So I think, you know, people will want to see that their organization cares about them as a person.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. Actually, it's really interesting because, but yeah, Bumble have done that. HubSpot did something similar, and they've both gone through, like, you know, stratospheric growth over the last year. So their people have been working flat out. I know lots of people have been working flat out, but it's very, very interesting that they've done that. And we were talking about it. We were trying to work out how to do something similar. But as an SME, it's very difficult to do things in the same way. But really interesting what you're talking about in terms of that personal skill development and attention almost, because what I've noticed, we've grown quite a lot in the last 6 months. We've taken on quite a few new people and onboarded them remotely. And what I do notice is that people are not only hungry, really hungry for that growth and learning on an individual basis, as well as kind of part of the team, but they're also really savvy about it as well, much more self-aware at a younger age than when I first started my career 20 years ago, where people, you know, really hadn't really thought about their career necessarily, or what skills they needed for the role, or how they were going to get those. But people are, you know, building their kind of like their armory of stuff they've got available to them, their toolkits. They're doing their own online learning. They're pushing themselves and asking questions in interviews about what's available for me and what's beyond that, so that, you know, they don't just want the standard program. They want to know, okay, so who's going to spend time with me? Who's going to help me apply that? How am I going to work and operate in the team? How am I going to be valued? And I love it. It's almost like I'm getting interviewed in the interviews. But it's really fantastic to see, as I said, not only that hunger, but that savviness as well, in terms of really people really pushing companies to say, you know, I don't just want the standard thing. I want something that's going to be accredited. I want something that can build what I've already got. I don't just want, you know, something different. And I'm liking seeing that. But I think you're right. You know, for big companies as well, it's going to be quite hard, isn't it? Because managers will still be the most important conduit for that experience, the human experience, for people to feel that they've got individualized kind of consideration and individualized focus.
Yeah. Ellen's made a great point actually in the comment section around micromanagement and the impact that working from home and hybrid working has had, and seeing an increase in micromanagement, because it's tough. And I guess we're moving, and I love Brené's recent podcast on armored leadership versus kind of daring leadership, and she's working on a 2-part at the moment. I love it. And it is about that. It's about you feeling vulnerable as a manager potentially, and actually driving towards accountability rather than a kind of micromanaging approach. But that's a new skill, right? And that is something that us as managers, as people, not just in a management role, but maybe if you're looking at your career going, well, I want to be a manager, I'm going to need to build these skills for my future. I think it's a really interesting one, that leading with heart is becoming more and more important, and more on people's minds.
And I'd love to know actually from you, Kerry, so on the spot question here, how do you do that when you're at a senior level? So when you're developing trust with lots of people in the organization, not just your direct team, it's so much harder because you don't have the opportunity to necessarily have one-to-ones with large numbers of people. And I know there's quite a lot of people in your organization. So how do you manage that? How do you focus on building trust with people you don't see all the time?
It is quite hard, and I've found it harder in working fully remotely as well, because what I realized is, you know, there's a physicality to things like trust, and body language, whole body language, is an element of communication and expression of who you are. And, you know, we've had almost, you know, a year where, you know, this is it in terms of the expression. Even, you know, using hand gestures feels weird when you sort of see, like, you know, and I think there's a physicality in a way to trust, and there's a consistency. And so from my perspective, I try and remain as consistent as I can in my views and my opinions on things, in who I am and what I say, not robotically, clearly, But, I think it does build trust with larger numbers if, no matter who asks, you have that same view, or you have that same doubt, or you have that same question. And I quite often talk to people about, I have a dilemma here, because I don't ascribe to the leadership style that says you have to have the exact answer. And that is a leadership style that's been dominant. But I will share with people consistently what my doubt is, or what my dilemma is. And then sometimes, obviously, what my sort of formed view on something. I mean, I think other than, aside from that, I also think that, leaders have been in this pandemic as well. They're not immune to it. They are not somehow been gifted some extra sort of, passes on the experience of this pandemic. And so almost sharing with people, what it's been like for me, what I've been grateful for, and really listening, I think has been helpful. But I think trust in, building trust in large numbers is really, really challenging.
It really is, isn't it? And I don't know if this is something that you're probably better at than I am, because you've got such a good analytics background, Kerry. But I've been really challenged recently, because in the kind of the corporate career that I grew up with, I trusted the senior leaders, because I trusted the organization to put the right people in senior leadership roles. And so everything they said, I trusted and just took as read, that they knew the right way to go. They were going to guide the organization accurately. They had the right experience, skills, thinking on things, and that I automatically trusted them. I gave them my trust before they kind of earned it. And actually, I've been more challenged recently, particularly from my lovely Gen Zers who are saying, okay, so your answer is this, but why? And I'm going, oh, okay, right. Well, 6 years ago, there was this study, and actually it was coinciding with a piece of work I did for this organization, and having to prove the data behind everything I'm saying has really it's really impacted me. And so it's part of my learning. This is my kind of like Q1, Q2 personal development, backing everything up with data. So, oh, by the way, this came from this. And the team are laughing at me now because I'm doing it all the time. But it's really interesting, because I think that actually is going to be really important for senior leaders going forward in terms of trust, because, Gen Zers obviously can find anything on the internet now. And we didn't grow up with that in the same way. And so, being able to kind of backtrack and go, well, hang on a second, is that right, what you're saying there? Because I don't know if I believe you. There's this like mistrust in, where did you get that from?
I think I think it's brilliant. I mean, what you're really doing there, Alex, I think, is unpacking your wisdom. So wisdom is collective sense of experiences and knowledge, and you don't even know how your brain often creates it, quite frankly. We're not sure about that. But if you're unpacking that and teaching and mentoring, because people then go, oh, I don't know about that study, I'll go and have a look at that, or isn't that interesting that connection has been made with that. And I do think leaders as teachers is going to be key for the next generation, because, as you say, they're thirsty for knowledge. They're very good and skilled at attaining it. But I think there's an interest in how do people personally make sense of all that, and why do they have that? So, I mean, I think it is probably quite confronting when you get that, and it's but I do think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's good, and it shows that the team are just absolutely fine to ask any questions, and there's psychological safety there to be able to challenge and say, well, I don't understand that, or actually I don't agree with that, because I don't think that's the way things are. And it's lovely. But I love the fact that you use the word wisdom. That makes me feel a whole lot better. Thank you. I'm looking at the clock thinking, my goodness, we've literally only got just over a minute left. We've covered so many different topics. Thank you very much, Ellen. And who else have we had on here? I can't see the names. Sally as well, joining us with some questions and comments. Fantastic input. We'll be certainly coming back to some of those comments afterwards, and we've got a bit of time to focus a bit more on them. But really enjoyed talking to you today, Kerry. Thank you so much. Talking about, hybrid working, how we communicate it, what's beyond hybrid, how do we retain people and recruit people in the future. There is a lot going on, isn't there? And I really hope that our conversation has sparked some ideas for whoever's now off to work, whether they're off to work in their office in the garden, or whether they're off to work listening to something while they're cycling in a Peloton class, or I know I don't have that, but I know some people do at the moment. But it's I hope everyone's going to have a really good day as a Friday to finish up this week, a very busy week, and obviously we're open to questions, thoughts, comments, and we just want to say really big thank you, Kerry, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
All right, well, take care. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you to everyone who's listening and listening to the recording as well. We'll be back here next Friday, 8:30 in the morning. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, both.